have decided to go against my better judgment and
Space travel. Then I want you
Jeff Bezos to open the hatch.
end off with the very own Brett Cooper and going through her
Fallout,
video.
the PR crisis, it has been so juicy and incredible.
Hello and welcome to the RedMars Podcast. I'm your host, AstroJake, and today we are diving into something that I have said for the longest time that I would not do, but due to recent events and many people sending me messages and seeing other influencers in that post online, I have decided to go against my better judgment and really tackle the debunking and kind of fact-checking all of these people who have gone and said that the New Shepard NS-31 launch is fake and a PR nightmare. So we're going to get real-time reactions to some of these videos that have been posted out there and really go through it step by step and kind of see what everybody's saying and why they're saying that it's fake or CGI or really the mission itself just wasn't a mission. While there is some context here to kind of clarify on, I do understand that many people have called them astronauts, and in all reality, that whole definition of the word really is beginning to change with space tourism, since people can spend X amount of dollars and find themselves in a suborbital flight these days. You can even go on orbital flights if you have even more money. And does that really make you an astronaut? Well, by definition, you know, if you've gone beyond that Kármán line, maybe, but in reality, I like to save the term astronaut for those that are scientifically contributing to the industry, and more so those other individuals are space tourists rather than astronauts. This is my opinion, and that's kind of where I sit on this. However, it does not go to say that they did not go to the categorical space, or by definition space, by going beyond that Kármán line. Whether you go above the Kármán line for 1 second, 4 minutes, you still went above the Kármán line. So by definition, they have gone to space. So I don't want to throw any shame on those individuals or anybody that kind of talks in these videos that I'm going to be reacting to today. However, just want to make that very clear on kind of where my stance is on that. And by any means, it is still quite an achievement going into space, whether you paid for it or not. That is quite the trip. So with that in mind, and kind of to do some comparisons here before we jump into it, you can spend a bunch of money and go for a flight in a fighter jet. Doesn't make you a fighter pilot, but you've been in a fighter jet and you've gone into the air in that space or in that aircraft. So same thing here. You have gone and flown on a spacecraft. No, you're not the pilot of the spacecraft, and you might not be an actual astronaut to those standards that we hold, say, NASA astronauts to, but you have gone to space and you have gone on a spacecraft. So with that, without further ado, let's jump into it, and we are going to start our first video kind of recapping the mission itself, the space flight, and then we're going to jump into, let's say, the Benny Show. Who else do I have here? Candid Truth. And then we will end off with the very own Brett Cooper and going through her video, who I have lots of words to share about, and we'll get into that shortly. So without further ado, let's jump into it. All right, so we're just going to hop right into it. Let's start off with the recap from New Shepard's 31st launch here, which is the Human Space Flight 11. We're going to watch this recap, then we'll hop right into some of these videos on conspiracy theories and whatnot, and then just straight up wrong facts about what the New Shepard flight is about. So here we go.
Got it? 1, 2, 3. Taking up space!
We're doing astronaut training today. We're going to learn everything that you need to know to fly a nominal mission to space.
We are beginning the simulation at T+2 minutes. Separation is confirmed.
It is my pleasure to tell you, you've passed. Does that make you feel confident? Yes. Does that make you feel good?
It makes it start to feel even more real.
Even more real. Yes, no, this is a real space flight that takes place. And this is them training in the Astronaut Training Center, which you'll see in one of the following clips here when they're standing outside the building. And this is where they're learning their egress training. Egress training is learning how to get in and out of your seat, how to exit and enter the spacecraft, any emergency procedures you need to follow, and whatnot. This is not about learning how to do scientific research or go to the International Space Station or anything along those lines. This is just a space tourism flight. That is what New Shepard is for. It is a suborbital space tourism flight that flies a parabolic flight that goes above the Kármán line and then returns back to Earth. The whole mission's about 11 minutes-ish long, and that is why you do not see training taking place over weeks, months, or even years like NASA astronauts.
What is the vibe of the New Shepard crew this morning now that the morning is finally here?
This gives you
Babies,
a
I love
look
you so
inside.
much. Love you, Grandpa. I love you, Daisy.
Here we go to launch. It's a better shot inside the capsule. And away they go. The whole daisy. So while this comes up here, I'm going to quickly get to one that somebody sent me where they talk about, oh, you're in space, the cosmic radiation of the space environment. Somebody trying to sound real smart here. They're like, it would have destroyed that. And everybody in there in their spacesuits, that's not real spacesuits, they would have been killed by the radiation. So this is why this whole launch was fake. It didn't take place. Well, I'm here to tell you that is incorrect. They are within the Van Allen belts and the protection of Earth's natural protection sphere of the magnetosphere and all that stops a lot of those cosmic radiations. So that is why you on Earth are also not dying of radiation, because if we didn't have that, we'd all be more or less dying of different types of cancer and all kinds of stuff from the radiation of the cosmic rays that come from the sun and deep space. So anyways, without going too much on a tangent there's the daisy that everyone said should have been shriveled up. It is not shriveled up because not only did they only go 100 and so kilometers above the surface of the Earth, they have not gone through all of the atmosphere. They are still above that international designated zone of what is considered space. That's the Kármán line. And they are inside the Van Allen belts that protect us here on Earth from the radiation, cosmic radiation of space. Now, to give you some orientation here on spacecraft and the comparison, I guess, to the International Space Station. I believe the International Space Station orbits between 250 kilometers and 450 kilometers, and it has these reposition maneuvers where it lifts itself back up because it is still interacting with a very, very, very thin portion of the atmosphere where these atoms build up on the leading edge or the leading side of the spacecraft in its orbital trajectory around Earth in its orbit. And again, orbit. This is not suborbital like New Shepard. ISS is in an orbit around Earth, meaning it is constantly in free fall but not falling back to the Earth because it is traveling at an orbital velocity that allows it to do so, that being 17,500 miles per hour-ish. But anyways, at those altitudes, they also grow plants and whatnot on the space station. They do experiments there, and those are also not all shriveled up like people seem to expect from Katy Perry's little daisy there. So there you go. You can see upside down here, there's little droplets floating around, similar to you'd see on other shorter duration parabolic flights as well. Not even ones that go up to the Kármán line. We used to do this in our trainer aircraft when we'd fly. You go and do kind of like a parabolic. You pull up, and when you get to the top, you're going to push your nose down, and then you can hold a pen or something and watch it float until you kind of pull back on the G and then reload the aircraft again.
Look at the moon.
What a beautiful shot. You can here see the curvature of the Earth. There's the moon in the distance. Absolutely incredible.
Oh my gosh. You see that?
Another thing that was posted here. I'll see if I can get another shot.
Oh my gosh. I got you, Flip.
Here we go. Everybody's hair. This was another one that I saw that was sent to me about, why is it that their hair isn't all floating like that, like some of the female astronauts that you see on the International Space Station. And again, it has to go with the parabolic nature of this flight versus an orbital flight and the level of gravity that is imposed on those travelers or astronauts in space. And their hair kind of resembles that. So when you're in an orbital flight and you're farther away, you have more exposure to that microgravity environment. Here, they are also in a microgravity environment, but the length of the hair plays a key part of that. Hair products play a key part in that. I think that's probably a big part of this. Actually, there's no limitation on the hairspray that they need to put in their hair and stuff like that for this flight. Now going to the International Space Station, it's going to cost you a lot of money to send that hairspray bottle up there. So I'm sure that's also part of it.
Gotcha.
Oh my gosh.
In all of these, you can still see little droplets and that floating around. I saw somebody else post trying to do a conspiracy. What is that flag that she's holding in her hand? I guess the Bahamas flag. Know your geography.
That's amazing.
Not doing that in 1G. So clearly in a microgravity environment.
There comes it, the rocket down. It's going to relight its engine.
Back comes the New Shepard rocket. It does its self-landing, and then we wait for the crew capsule to come back, and all the crew comes out of the crew capsule, and that is the New Shepard flight for NS-31. Now let's get into the fun. Blue Origin, fully decoded. Katy Perry, Gayle King, fake conspiracy theory. I think the key part here is that it's a fake conspiracy theory. It's not a real conspiracy theory, because it is all very, very far stretched. I'm not even going to go into the beginning of this video. You can see just in the tab series talking about some weird Egyptian, I don't even know what, obviously things that aren't taking place and real stretches. So we're going to focus on the first part of this where he talks about the door, because that seems to be everybody's biggest issue with this launch was, the door. So let's talk about it.
Space travel. And I want you to notice on the timeline of this live footage, it's an hour and 45 minutes in, and watch the door closely.
Out of her mouth, but really her heart.
So I watched this live and I saw this take place, and my first thought was, uh-oh, who opened the door from the inside? You're supposed to wait. Now, there's nothing stopping you from waiting. It's just part of your training. Somebody clearly got a little excited, and I thought it was funny. But yeah, we'll see what his thoughts are here.
That door just opened up from the inside, and the lady on the outside peeked in and said something, and the door shut again.
She could have said, "Could you please close the door?" The founder of Blue Origin wanted to be the one who opened it for the cameras.
Now, 3 minutes later, Jeff Bezos comes over there to officially pry open the door.
People forget that this is a space tourism flight, and more or less for publicity, so that people continue to want to fly on New Shepard and fund the Pathfinder mission that New Shepard is. And so cameras need to get in place and whatnot, so that the founder can go and open it if that's so what he chooses to do. And that is all that happened here. His fiance is on this space flight, and so he wanted to be the one that opened it and welcomed them back to Earth.
Here goes Jeff Bezos to open the hatch.
You didn't really close it again.
They're cheering like they've been trapped.
All right, listen to this. This, if you just pay attention to the audio, this debunks everything he's saying right now, because they're not even trying to hide it.
You didn't really close it again.
I don't know if you can hear that, and especially for those that aren't watching the video, let me just play it one more time.
Here goes Jeff Bezos to open the hatch.
You didn't really close it again.
There we go. His words from the founder's mouth, Jeff Bezos, "You didn't even close it again." There's no denying that it was previously opened by the inside, and there's a lever on the inside that allows you to open and close it. And if you watch the Space Gals video, she actually goes into this as well, because she flew on one of the previous flights. And in the astronaut training, she goes into the training capsule, and you can see the same capsule door. There is a lever that allows you to open and close the door from the inside, and that's all that happened here. The astronauts got excited. They're like, hey, let's get out of here, and clearly forgot that Jeff wanted to be the one to open it. So they reclosed the door. Clearly didn't push that lever down all the way. So when Jeff went to insert the mechanism on the outside through the little hole, which if I kind of come back out here for a second, you might be able to see it. There's a little hole right here. You see 3 dots. It's the farthest dot to the left. That's where this little device kind of goes in, and you crank it, and that's doing more or less the same thing as the handle on the inside. Now, you don't want a handle on the outside for aerodynamic purposes. It would cause a lot of drag and cause weird, flow of air over the capsule on its trip back to the surface. That's all that's going on here, though. No conspiracy, nothing weird. Normal day of life of, space flight, especially in this one. And you can open the door from the inside. Once it's pressurized and you're actually launching and the ECLIS, or the environmental system's activated and all that, the door is going to not open because you have a pressure differential compared to the exterior or ambient air, especially once you go into, I'm not going to say the vacuum of space, but above the Kármán line where the atmosphere is so thin. If you didn't have that pressure differential, you'd have a lot of issues inside, and it would try and, it wouldn't be, you'd need spacesuits anyways. So when the pressure's inside does not equal the outside ambient pressure, the door is not going to be as easy to open. So, nor would you want to. You'd be paying your own ticket to the other side there. So, moral of the story is there's a lever on the inside. You can open the door on the inside. Nothing weird going on here.
That door just opened.
Yes, the door just opened. Got it. All right. Now let's get into the even funnier part of this, where he really stretches here. And clearly, again, this is really a pattern you'll see with all these videos and everybody talking here, is their lack of understanding or research done into these topics. Or maybe they did it and they just want the views. I don't know. But if you go and listen to this, we'll kind of go through and show you what they got wrong, and a simple Google search could verify whatever you're saying.
If this is a legitimate space travel. So symbols are a universal language.
My dear friends threw me a blast-off party and gave me this feather.
First of all, very nice of her friends to get her a necklace like that for a launch. Looks super cool, and I love that it matches more or less the feather from Blue Origin.
Which obviously, represents the Blue Origin logo.
Why? Why a feather? This is all.
Again, yeah, why a feather? That's a great question. And a lot of people probably don't know the answer to this. So what you can do is go into that handy-dandy Google search bar, or you could even ask AI and, hey, what do you know? What's the meaning of Blue Origin's feather logo? They have asked Jeff Bezos, and there's no hiding some weird meaning in here or whatnot. It's very, uniform across anybody who is interested in space, aviation, anything to do with flight. Because birds fly and they have feathers, and throughout all history of humans here on Earth, they've been fascinated through the flight of birds. And so this is Jeff Bezos's answer here. The feather is simple, Bezos said. It's just a symbol of perfection of flight. For thousands of years, we humans have been looking up at the birds and wondering what it would be like to fly. I think it's representative of freedom and exploration, and mobility and progress. For the people who are in love with flight, there's no substitute. Blue Origin employees can sometimes be seen wearing silver feather lapel pins. Flown in space, of course. So yeah, simple as that. Feather represents, flight and all that comes from what we see of birds. And it was the logo that Jeff chose for his company. No different than this logo that this Candid Truth has of a brain and a side profile of a face with sunglasses. You can try and pull some weird cryptic thing out of that as well, really out of anything. You could also do it with his video background. Why did he choose those colors? Maybe he's a blast from the past in the 80s. Maybe he just thought it was cool. Who knows? He wears this hat that says kingdom. Does he think he's part of some kingdom? Maybe. You can stretch things any ways you want. Anyways, enough of this guy, Candid Truth. Nothing true about what he's talking about, so we'll leave it at that. Let's jump over to this gentleman, Benny Johnson. The Benny Johnson Show, or Benny Show. He's saying this proves this was fake. Well, let's hear what you have to say, Mr. Benny Johnson.
Kissed the earth. Okay.
Anyways.
She kissed the earth and she liked it. Now, let me ask a question here.
Here's Ploy from the
footage.
crew capsule. Those are like the guide parachutes. There go the drone parachutes. Just free falling right there until there's
footage of them allegedly screaming as this craft
allegedly screaming. Not allowed to scream. Screaming's fake.
I'm going to tell you what sparks a lot of conspiracy theories. Number one.
Let's hear it.
This doesn't look like a pleasant landing. The median age of these women, this is going to get me in trouble, is like 6.
You got to love when people say, sparks conspiracy theories. I don't understand it. I never looked into the research on any of this stuff, so, it's got to be conspiracy theory. Okay. Just because you don't understand something doesn't mean it's a conspiracy theory. That's not how things work. I don't know what his background is, but, I bet you there's many things that he doesn't understand how they work, and does that just mean it's all a conspiracy theory? Maybe to him it is. Who knows? But for me, if I don't understand something, I try to figure it out. maybe I'll do some research, I'll read a book, I'll do some searching online. A lot of the times there's a pretty simple explanation for it. And in this case, there most definitely is. So let's watch this landing.
60. And this seems like a top. That seems.
So he's thinking this looks like a terrible, rough landing, whatnot. And because these ladies are in their 60s, which, first of all, is not that old, and second of all, William Shatner flew the exact same flight on the exact same style of rocket, and I don't believe it was the same one. I think this is the newer model from New Shepard, but the one right before this. And he was in his 90s when he went up. It's a little bit older than 60. And, he might check my math on that one and say I'm wrong, but, we'll stick with it. And this landing here, I'm glad he mentions that. And really this goes to show the engineering wins and feats that the New Shepard engineers really did here. And again, goes to this being a, Pathfinder rocket and how they test out some of these things before it becomes human rated. But there's a puff of air, and they mentioned that in the webcast if he managed to listen and actually watch it. I'm assuming he didn't. He just took some footage that he found online or clipped it from the live stream without any audio. I don't know. But they mention exactly what this is and why it looks the way it does. And, well, when you're in a desert where it doesn't rain too much, it's really easy to kick up dust. If anybody's ever been to the desert, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It gets in everywhere. And so if you have something shooting a bunch of air underneath to create a cushion before you hit the ground, and that's just how propulsion works. You can send a quick pulse of air, and that would then really quickly neutralize the velocity at which you're traveling downwards, and it creates kind of a absorbing pillow underneath you. And then all that air's got to go somewhere, so it shoots out the sides, and that's why you see this cloud of dust on the outside here, and it absorbs the brunt of the force for that landing, on a hard surface. Now you get things like other capsules like Dragon from SpaceX, and they land in the water, so they have a bit of help there of the water absorbing a lot of the force when they hit the ground. But landing in the desert, you have different engineering challenges with that, and one of those is overcome through this system here that gives you that pillow to land on. Nothing fake about it, nothing weird, and it's surprisingly, not that bad on the body, clearly, since William Shatner also did this. The Dude Perfect crew did this as well. Or crew, I think it was just the one gentleman from Dude Perfect. But anyways, point is, it's happened many times before. This is the 11th human flight, and it is the 31st mission of New Shepard. Again, been doing this many times. Nothing new.
Seems like a tough landing.
All right, what else does he talk about here? Oh, yes, this one. This is great. Let's listen to this.
Something that the internet is asking. You see there, clean as a whistle, that pod. And this is what a pod looks like when it's, returned from space.
Pod. Well, first of all, it's a capsule. This is a Dragon capsule, completely different spacecraft than the New Shepard crew capsule. The main difference here is a Crew 8, I guess this one's Crew 8, sorry. Freudian slip there, reading while speaking. The Crew Dragon is a orbital spacecraft, and the crew capsule is a suborbital spacecraft. Big differences here, and this goes to show, again, the majority of the internet that's commenting all this stuff does not understand how things work. A orbital spacecraft needs to orbit the Earth at a given altitude, and the low Earth orbit, which is the orbit that the space station is in and which these crew capsules go to, specifically the Dragon goes to, it needs to match the velocity of the required velocity to stay in orbit and not fall back to Earth. So in order to be in orbit, you are constantly falling, but you have to fall fast enough that you miss the Earth every time. So if here's the Earth and you're going to fall, well, if you move quick enough, your orbital velocity is quick enough, you miss it, and then you miss it, and you keep going. If you don't do that, you kind of follow this parabolic flight, and you come right back. And that becomes suborbital. So that's what New Shepard does. It's suborbital. It doesn't travel fast enough to stay in orbit, nor does it go high enough. If you needed to stay in orbit at the Kármán line, you'd have to move ridiculously fast. And it would be really hard to do that. So low Earth orbit, where the International Space Station lives, which is that range of like 250 to 450 kilometers. I think it extends above that for LEO, but that's where the International Space Station kind of hovers in you need to travel around 17,500 miles per hour in order to stay there and not fall back to Earth. That is a huge velocity. Now, New Shepard, I believe, goes to 2,000, somewhere around between 2,000 and 3,000 miles per hour, and that is a up and down flight with a little bit of parabolic shape there. And because of that, there's no real re-entry or anything like that. You're going above the Kármán line, which is that international boundary of what we consider space. And because of that, and the speeds you're not traveling at, there's no scorch marks. You're not going fast enough to really to see those heating effects that they see there. Now, there is heating, of course, because you're traveling through the atmosphere and you're going faster, thousands of miles per hour. And so there's a heat shield on the bottom side that you can see in the images of the capsule returning to Earth, but nowhere near enough that you're going to see scorch marks. It's not burning up, moving tens of thousands of miles per hour on re-entry from low Earth orbit. It's not orbiting at all, actually. So that is a key reason why you don't see these scorch marks, and just goes to show the understanding that these individuals have on what they're talking about is nil.
Space, right here. Here's the Dragon X, like a marshmallow, like a burnt marshmallow, these spacecrafts.
Yeah, burnt marshmallow. Well, how do you burn a marshmallow? You stick it really close to a flame. And if you don't go too close to the flame, it doesn't burn up at all. It'll, same thing.
Why does it look so clean exactly? Why? I don't know. There's some other questions.
Yeah, I don't like this Benny show. He spends more of his time just throwing shame at people rather than talking about facts or anything like that. And that's really the majority of this. He talks about the door, he talks about the scorch marks, and then everything else is just calling people names and saying that they're, not smart or they're annoying or whatnot. And really, I find it annoying that he doesn't do his research, which again, I said there's a pattern. All of these people are talking about things they know nothing about and don't even try to learn about, which brings us to Brett Cooper. Oh, Brett Cooper. I was hoping for so much more from your video, and when I saw this one come out, I was actually excited to see what you were going to talk about this space flight. And when I saw the title, I was like, okay, I know where this is kind of going. And I was fine with it. Let's hear what you have to say. Everyone has their opinion on things, and I've watched other bits of her content, and not an issue, but then, well, we'll just get into it.
There is truly nothing more unserious than a bunch of female celebrities flying into space in a dong-shaped ship while claiming that they're astronauts saving...
First of all, a dong-shaped ship. Well, has she ever seen any rocket? Here's a bunch of them. Rockets of the world. Guess what they all resemble, minus the ice cream truck here at the beginning. They all follow the same kind of shape. Obviously, there's some that have some space shuttles attached and whatnot, but, more or less they all follow the same look. And they all come in different shapes and sizes. How about that? New Shepard is no different. Anyways, carry on, please.
Humanity, but alas, that is 2025. So last Monday, we all watched as Blue Origin took its 31st flight into orbit with an all...
I'm glad she acknowledges that it's the 31st flight and not fake. So that's one thing I'll give Brett. She doesn't say that this is a fake flight, but she says it is a PR nightmare. We'll get into that.
All-female crew, which included Katy Perry and Gayle King, aka Oprah's best friend, because that's the only reason we know Gayle King, and Lauren Sanchez, who is Jeff Bezos' fiance. And guys, this flight...
And helicopter pilot, by the way. Super cool.
Flight into space was propped up as some sort of historic endeavor because this was Blue Origin's first female crew. It was the first all-female crew that had ever gone to space since 1963, and because of that, it turned into a whole girl power movement. And leading up to this trip has just been a lot. Like, I have wanted to talk about this on the show probably for months.
This is great. Listen to this. She's been wanting to talk about this for months. Okay, keep going.
Months at this point, but I have been waiting to watch this actually transpire to see what happened when they went into space before we did an all-encompassing recap. And guys, it was better than I ever expected. I mean, the actual trip...
All right, so before I let her finish this, let's talk about this for a second. All right, so she says that the mission, space flight, whatever. She's been building up for this for a couple weeks, really wanted to watch it. She was ready for it, wanted to watch, then she finally saw this thing, and she's like, it was better than I expected. Although she got all of her facts wrong. Sorry, Brett. I expected more from you, especially when in a lot of your other footage, you talk about misinformation, debunking this and that, and, well, you're kind of spreading misinformation yourself. Let's continue on here. This is when it gets really good.
The fallout, the PR crisis, it has been so juicy and incredible to see. There was so much PR. We had been talking about it for months. Everybody was taking it so seriously because it was going to be this profound and impactful endeavor on society. These 6 women being thrust into space. Like, I literally thought that they were going to space for a few days. I thought that they were in training for months, that they were going to go up to the International Space Station. Like, I've never paid attention to the Blue Origin flights. Like, that's Jeff.
Absolutely. There she, nail on the head right there. I remember the nail on the, whatever that saying goes. But, yeah. She says that she expected them to go into space for days, weeks of training, months of training, going to the International Space Station. Well, Brett, did you ever really look up what New Shepard was? Did you Google it? Did you go on Blue Origin's website before doing this video to say, what can I actually expect? You had said you did months of prep waiting for this to happen. You were so excited, waited months for this, and what, not once you didn't do a Google search? Come on. So New Shepard is a suborbital flight, as I've mentioned throughout this video several times. Suborbital, meaning it does not orbit the Earth, which also means you're not really going to catch up with the International Space Station and go dock there, which also means you probably don't need the training as if you were going to do that. Again, you only need to know how to do egress training because it is a suborbital space tourism flight. So I really don't know where she was getting this information from, or it was just her lack of knowledge, but she doesn't really address that here. She just says she expected so much more. This should have been, this extravagant thing. I can't believe that it wasn't any of this. And then she's going to go on to talk about it was only 11 minutes long. Do you know who else did this 11-minute flight? Alan Shepard, way back in the day. One of the initial space flights here on Earth, the first real astronaut over on the Western world. And she's going to say, oh, well, they didn't even go into space. Well, that's not really true. And again, the Kármán line, that international zone, puts you into space. Now, I don't know if she actually says they didn't go into space, so we'll keep watching here, and let's see what she has to say. I'll move myself a little bit more out of view here. All right.
Jeff Bezos' company, it's space tourism. I had no idea what was going on, but I literally thought that this was a serious endeavor. But no. The trip was 11 minutes long. Just take a look at this graph. They leave Earth, they pop right up.
Key point here, this is the same flight path, more or less, of Alan Shepard's flight in, I think it was the Mercury capsule way back when. Follows the same look and rocket as the other one. Obviously, the difference here is he didn't have a self-landing rocket, but the capsule path and all that more or less matches.
Up just into orbit so that they can look down and see.
Again, not into orbit. They went above the Kármán line, which again is that international boundary of space. Did not orbit. In order to orbit, you need an orbital velocity relative to the orbit you plan to stay in. And if she's referring to the International Space Station, which she probably is because that seems to be all she knows about, then you would need to go around 17,500 miles per hour.
See Earth, and then they immediately come back down.
Immediately. No, there's several minutes up there. Anyways.
Experienced zero gravity and weightlessness for about 3 minutes. And they did all of this in a spaceship that literally looks like a wang.
If she thinks that this looks like a wang because of the shape, which, sure, you can compare it to that, then she's talking into one. There's one beside her here. Her arm looks like one. If she stands straight with her arms at her side, she's also a wang. So, there's really no point in saying that. And I don't know, if she's trying to say that this is, women empowerment, but they're flying on this. Well, every rocket is shaped more or less the same design here because of aerodynamics and physics. You're not going to fly a rectangular prism into space. That makes no sense, and you can look up why. You're not going to fly a brick into space, or a brick-shaped spacecraft, or anything like that. It's just not what you do because it doesn't make sense. You'd break it. You'd end up probably under maximum dynamic pressure imploding on yourself or something. The structures are not built for that. It's not designed for that. It's not aerodynamic. Trying to get through the atmosphere, you'd burn way too much fuel. You'd probably, parts fly off, whatnot. Anyways, Yes.
Even their graph here looks like just the tip.
Clearly, she never took a math course because that's just a parabolic thing. You know, if she graphed anything ever before that was following, you know, formula that follows that, you know, maybe she was like in Superbad drawing dicks on everything, and she just like, oh, everywhere I look, I see dicks. Maybe that's possible.
Sit around all day and draw pictures of dicks.
Like a man dick?
Yeah, like a man dick.
Anyways, we don't know what her past was like. I know she talks about childhood actor. Maybe she was in there. Anyways, keep going.
Which is basically what they did. They just got to the tip of space, and then they came back down. Like, basically, in less scientific terms, this was the flight. Just the tip, just the tip.
I'm starting to think she does have a problem like in Superbad. I think it was Superbad. Anyways.
Well, I don't know. It's really messed up.
Into space for Gayle King and Katy Perry. Now, I will not knock these women completely. Like, going into space is obviously not a walk in the park. Would I ever do?
No, I will give her props to that. She does go through and talk about the scientific kind of nature of some of the folks that were on the flight and some of the other ladies, and does talk about how Jeff Bezos' fiance is a helicopter pilot. And she does give some credit where credit is due. I don't know if she talks any more about the actual space flight itself. Let's see. What do we got here? Oh, yeah.
For all of our benefit. It was constant. So now that we know that that was the intent, let's go see them actually in space. Let's see them in action, taking up all of that space for our benefit.
Deploy from the crew capsule. Those are like the guide parachutes. There go the drogue parachutes. Just free falling right there until those drogues came out.
I mean, it's pretty fabulous that we can literally hear them coming down to Earth. And these are not experienced astronauts. They don't know what they're...
So clearly she realized that. Not experienced astronauts, so, well, there's that. But I don't think there's anything else really worth watching in her video here. What was this one? Oh, yeah, this is some other comments, I guess, that was given that she took from online. So it's not a new mission for Blue Origin. No, it's not. They've done sort of quick suborbital flights 11 times before for human flights, yes, and even more for payload missions. They went into the air, but not technically into space. That is very incorrect. As I've mentioned, the international boundary for going into space, recognized for that at least, is the Kármán line. The Kármán line sits 100 kilometers from the surface of the Earth, and they went above that line, so that technically means they went into space, not into space. And then it says they were passengers, not astronauts. Yeah, it's kind of true. It's a space tourism flight. You're not piloting the aircraft. It's a fully autonomous flight, and so... You know, that definition, I think, kind of needs to change, especially with the more space tourism that comes out. When you say astronaut, typically people think of NASA astronauts, not paid space tourism. If you're going up there as a tourist, let alone a passenger, you're a space tourist, in my opinion, not really astronaut. But at the same time, if the definition is going above the Kármán line, that international boundary for space, that makes you an astronaut, then by definition, then sure. And then what do we see here? All things are fine and good. It's just weird to see this 11-minute stratospheric trip presented as some major advancement in space exploration. It wasn't about some major advancement in space exploration. The main thing here is the diversity of humans being represented in space. And that's the whole thing that Blue goes with, is the, you know, humans working and living in space. And you should have the diversity of personnel that do that, resemblance of the population here on Earth. And so having a full female crew fly this space tourism flight into space, again, above the Kármán line, that is what they're getting at here. It wasn't that, you know, there's some new technologies being used here or whatnot that got them there and that they contributed to. No, but they are a part of this advancement in the diversity of people that have gone to space. And that's all that this really was, and obviously everybody's going to interpret this in their own way and blow it millions of degrees into proportion, but that is it. I don't know if there's anything else here. I think she just goes on to really talk about the people themselves and what she doesn't agree with, and in Brett Cooper fashion, just, I guess, go at it. So we won't go any more into this. The main purpose was to just get her facts right, you know, spending a couple months to do it and not doing a Google search to really know what you're expecting to see. I find kind of weird if I'm excited about seeing something. Usually I'll do a Google search or look up on the company's website and be like, what can I expect from this? And clearly that didn't happen. But is what it is, and it has been done. So with that, that's all I really got for everybody. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you have any other information or things that you've seen online or social media, send it my way. I'd love to take a look at it, and I'll give you my thoughts on why something is the way it is, and maybe I can give some more of a scientific reasoning as to why what somebody's calling fake isn't fake and whatnot. But yeah, send it my way. Leave it in the comments. Let me know what you think. Definitely subscribe and stay tuned for other podcasts and video podcasts of this nature. Maybe I'll keep doing some more of these. If you enjoyed it, definitely let me know. Anyway, stay curious, keep looking up, and enjoy your weekend. Take care, everyone.